In this section, we are going to learn about object IDs in MongoDB. So in the last few lectures and sections, we have seen when we are creating a document, MongoDB is creating object ID by itself. It is the object IDs in MongoDB is like a primary key which we create in or the relational databases create for us. So the same way MongoDB also creates a object ID. So I'll show you, like we have this collection, student info collection. So I'm just querying it. So here you can see MongoDB has created this underscore ID field for us. We have given only name, age, subject and attendance, but this underscore ID field has been created by MongoDB. So in this section we are going to learn more about this field, and we'll also learn how we can create this field by ourselves. So instead of system is creating for us, we can also create, and we will also be learning what are these numbers mean in this object ID field. So all these things we'll learn in this section. So let's get started.
In this lecture, we will be understanding object IDs which MongoDB creates for us automatically. So we will learn what is this object ID and what does it mean. Let's look at the object ID field. So this is the object ID, which is the combination of some very random numbers and alphabets, something. So it's not a very understandable. So we'll learn what is this. So let's look at what is this. So the first thing, when we look at the object ID, one thing is very specific, which whatever object ID MongoDB creates for us, it is immutable. Immutable means it cannot be modified once it is created. You cannot modify it, you cannot alter it, you cannot edit it once the object ID has been created by the MongoDB. So MongoDB creates immutable object ID that cannot be modified, edit or alter. And the second thing is it is very unique. So whatever MongoDB creates, it's a unique object ID. The third thing is it's a BSON type data type, and it is a 12 byte value. So let's look at the, so this thing is the, this object ID is like it's a 12 byte value, which is a combination of like the time when the object is created and the host name on which the we are hosting our database MongoDB server, that host name also included in this, and then the process ID with that with which we have created the object ID or the collection, and then it is also having a random incrementing number. So this object ID is combination of host name, time and process ID and a random incrementing number, and that's why it is unique. You may ask a question like, why do we need this much complicated algorithm to create an object ID? Like we can use a simple incrementing number like we do in RDBMS. So answer is, since MongoDB is basically used in a large clustered environment where we host our MongoDB database on a different machines, different servers. So if we create a random incrementing number like 123 or 1234566 and then increment the last digit, it may not be unique on the, if you collect data from all the machines. So on one machine we create with the ID 1, at the same time somebody will create another object with the same ID 1, so it won't be unique. That's why MongoDB is combining all this server ID, host name, time, random incrementing number and process ID. So it will be very unique, almost unique in every situation. So this is the basic overview of MongoDB object ID. In the next lecture, we will be learning how we can create our own object ID instead of MongoDB is creating for us. In this lecture, we will be learning how to create our own object ID. So till now we have seen, we have not given the underscore ID field and it has been created automatically by the MongoDB server. So now what we'll do, while creating a document, we will be giving the underscore ID field. We will be creating as per our requirement. So that can be possible. We can create our own object ID. In that case, MongoDB will not be creating a underscore object ID field for us. So let's get started. So what I'll do, I'll create a new collection. In this case, I'll create, suppose product ID, product details collection. I'll insert some data in this. So what I'll do, I'll be in suppose I'll create the PRDT name. The first field I'll give PRDT name, and for PRDT name I'll give some name like suppose I'll give microphone. Okay, that's it. So I'll create a simple collection with the product ID, product name. So I'll create insert. Okay, this is done. So now what I'll do, I'll just query it. So I'll use find. See here, underscore object ID has been created for us by the MongoDB. So we have not given the underscore ID field here. So it has been created by MongoDB. Now what I'll do, the same thing. What I'll do here, I'll give underscore ID, comma 001. Okay, and then the product name I'll give television. Okay, so now hit enter. So here I'm giving underscore ID field. So let's see. Okay, done. I'll query it. See, while querying, what we are finding, the underscore ID field. Okay, let me show you. See here, in this case underscore ID is 1 and product name is television, but the earlier it was object ID created by the MongoDB. So in this way we can create our own object ID underscore ID field. So this is the way to create a underscore ID field. In the next lecture we will be seeing what is the benefit of object ID field created by MongoDB itself, and we see how we can get some more information through object ID which MongoDB server has created for us. In the last lecture we have discussed about how to create object IDs and how and what are object IDs. In this lecture we will be going to discuss about advantage of using default object ID that has been created by the MongoDB server. So we'll discuss advantage in this lecture, and in the next lecture we will discuss the disadvantage of using our own created object ID that we are creating. So let's get started. So this is the collection which we have created in the last lecture. So let's query it. Sorry for typo. db dot product details dot find. So see here we have two documents, one with the default object ID and the other is which we have created underscore ID equal to 1. So let's see the what we get. Like in the last lecture we have discussed like this object ID is 12 byte combination of like server on which we are running the MongoDB, and the process ID, the timestamp, and the in incrementing number, serial incrementing number. So this is the combination of all these things, and let's see what we can get. The one big advantage of this object ID which MongoDB is creating is we can get the timestamp from this. So let's see how we can do that. So I'll query the first document. Okay, find and then 0, it will get the first document. So see here we are getting as a result as the first document in the collection, and then what I'll do, dot underscore ID will give us the object ID. So this is the object ID, and then what I'll do, dot get timestamp. So this will give us the time when this object ID has been created, this document has been created. So see here we are getting the time when this document has been created. But if we go and do the same thing with the first document ID of 0 television, which we have created our own document ID underscore ID. So see here if I put enter, it is saying type error, object 1 has no method get timestamp. So this is one big disadvantage with the object IDs which we create. So this is the advantage of using default object ID which MongoDB creates for us. So in the previous lectures we have seen how we can create object ID, how MongoDB creates object ID, and we have understood the mechanism how object IDs work. And we have also seen advantage of using default MongoDB created object ID. What we are going to discuss in this lecture is disadvantage of using default object ID. It is always recommended to use object ID created by MongoDB, but there is a little disadvantage that we are going to discuss in this lecture. So let's get started. Okay, so let me start my connect to the MongoDB. Mongo. Hope you remember we need to type Mongo to connect to the MongoDB server. Mongo is the MongoDB shell, JavaScript console to connect with the MongoDB. So we connected. What we use? We use our, this is the database class info I'm going to use. So in this what we are using, we'll see collections. So collections, to see all the collections, so we have used this product details. So db dot product details dot find enter. So we have created this object ID, one default object ID and one created by our object ID which we have created. So one created by MongoDB and the other one we have created. So what is the disadvantage? Suppose only disadvantage that I can see or I came across while working is like when we we think in terms of web applications. So suppose we have a web applications like bookshop and slash product details slash, and then we have to give the product ID. So suppose you are giving product ID here. So what if we will use this object ID? So it will be like something like 554F312. So it will be looking very bad if we use this kind of auto generated MongoDB generated object ID. So in this case only we need to create our own user defined object ID like one, or if you want to give some name like my book or MongoDB book, something if you want to give. So in this case only we have to think about the user defined ID field. So this is the only disadvantage in terms of web application, where it will be looking bad or it will be difficult to identify the object ID or the product ID. So this is the only disadvantage. In other ways we always encourage to use default object ID.